Welcome to this edition of Ancestry Sidebar, where I focus on some of the odds and ends that I have found in ancestry research. Thank you for supporting Full Circle Ancestry by liking and subscribing. Today I'm going to focus on death records. I'm going to focus on the time frame of 1854 to 1885 in the village church records of Spišsky Hrhov in modern Slovakia. These death records have been a focus of mine for my specific family ancestry research. I'm going to have a more general focus on some of the bigger picture information. To zero in a little bit more clearly on what area I'm talking about here, from this map we can see in the lower left the town of Spišská Nová Ves. Near the top left is Levoča, and near the right top corner is Spišské Podrady, next to it the Spiš Castle. We're looking at the village Roman Catholic Church records of Spišsky Hrhov, and also includes the other villages that are listed here. I won't reel them all off, but of one note, the village second to last on the list, Konchan or Končany in the Slovak form, was integrated into Kilcho, so it is today not considered a separate village. This area is indicated basically by what is inside of this oval, and as a reference, here's the 1880 population for these various villages, which happen quite coincidentally to add up to exactly 2,000. It at least gives us a point of reference for the rough size of the population. Here's a look at the recorded deaths per year. So each one of these points is the sum of the deaths recorded within a given year. And again, this is the time frame 1854 to 1885. The average number of deaths per year is about 77 across this whole time period. And we can see there's, of course, some fluctuation over time, but things are pretty steady other than two really large spikes, those being the ones in 1855 and 1873. Let's zoom a little bit closer on 1855. Also within that year, it's even more closely packed into 2 months, July and August. Between those 2 months, just over 200 deaths were recorded. That spike of 200 is composed mostly, not entirely of course, but mostly of cholera victims. Cholera is a bacteria that causes people to become ill, especially in the time period that we're looking at, often succumbed to those conditions. As a reference, there were within this time period about 88 births per year, according to, again, the Roman Catholic Church records, and recognizing that there are people in these villages at this time of other faiths. There were people who were Jewish, people who were Greek Catholic, people who were Protestants. That's a very small percentage of the overall population. So within this, we're capturing most of the population of this area for sure. And if we just do some simple math, the delta between the number of births per year and the number of deaths per year on average is about 11 people. Losing 200 people in a 2-month period for a set of villages adding up to about 2,000 people, that's 10% of the population lost in 2 months, roughly speaking. And another way of thinking about this is that loss of 200 people with a delta of 11 new people per year would mean that it would take about 16 years for the village to recover its population. To say that this was a devastating 2 months is probably quite an understatement. Let's jump forward to 1873. So now the village has, by the numbers, recovered from that 1855 cholera epidemic, and it faced another one in 1873. This was less of an overall impact, with a total number of over 150 people, and using those same average numbers, this would result in 11 years to recover the population. Of course, this is all independent of anyone who moved into the villages or left the villages for America or any other place during this time frame, but just gives us a rough idea of the kind of impact that these short-term and significant epidemics like these two cholera epidemics would have had on small village or set of villages that we're talking about. If we look at a histogram of the deaths per month, for example, the first bar is how many months experienced only one death. The second bar, how many experienced two, and then 3, 4, 5, and so on. 4 deaths per month is the most frequently occurring number of deaths per month across that whole time frame. Shown here in the yellow box are the 5 largest numbers, which are those 2 months in 1855 and 3 months in 1873. If we were to remove those 5 highest from the data set, it lets us focus in a little bit more. Again, this is the same data, just with those 5 highest points removed. So no new information here, but you can see a little bit more clearly how the histogram is spread out, with the maximum at 4 deaths per month, and then kind of a distribution around that number. Another histogram looking at a different cut of the data. This is the age of death recorded, and in this case, each bar represents how many people were within a certain age range. The very first bar on the left side of the graph is how many people were less than the age of 1. The second bar represents how many people were at least 1 year old but less than 2 years old, and so on as we go across. And this is to the extent that 50%, very close to 50% of all the deaths recorded across this time period were people less than the age of 4. Of course, we all think of infant mortality of being a larger problem in the past, but certainly to me this was, I would say, even shocking that it was this skewed toward the low end of the age range. Remove the data from the yellow box on the left and just show the data beyond age 4. So again, there's no new data here, but it lets us see a little bit more clearly the variation across ages 4 and higher. Something very interesting stands out to me, quite literally, as I look through this. There are, not coincidentally, these peaks are at exactly 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80 years of age, as recorded in the death records. By the way, there were 2 people recorded as being age 90 in this entire age range, and that was the highest age recorded. This indicates to me that this is showing us that all the ages recorded are not exact, and we should not be surprised. There are certainly many cases where people didn't know how old they were themselves, let alone, let's say, maybe an older relative, a parent, aunt, uncle, etc., that they are recording, and maybe somebody didn't know exactly how old someone was. And it's a reminder to me that when looking at ages in these old church records or any other similar records, we should take them with a grain of salt. We should not assume that they're exact. There could be cases where you're looking at an age and it might not line up exactly with what you believe to be the correct age, but I would not get too worried or hung up about that. I would use the information that you have as part of a larger story around what you're finding in terms of the records that are available. Just one more piece of interesting information from my perspective anyway is to look at some current data. And of course, again, here with similar to the last Sidebar episode, I'm comparing 2 very completely different things, where I'm looking at the village records of a very small population versus the death rate across the entire United States in 2020, according to the data that was available to me. Obviously stands out that we have a very different picture here in the modern times that skew much more toward the old age end of the spectrum. And quick look at the old records from Spišsky Hrhov show us that, again, much more of a skew toward the younger ages. Well, that's it for today. I thank you for your attention and interest again. Please like and subscribe if there's anything else that you'd like to see more broadly represented from ancestral data. Please let me know.